Hello, everybody. This is probably my first time speaking to a big audience, so excuse me if I'm not as experienced. So I thought I'd start talking today. I tried to think, I had a look at what everybody else was doing and thought, oh, okay, what can fit in? So I thought, well, I'll start from where it all went wrong, I thought, because in my opinion, everything kind of started to go pear-shaped with regards to agriculture and probably a lot of the other problems we see in the world post at the end of Second World War, when the kind of invention of kind of synthetic inputs and kind of your fertilizers were born, and then kind of herbicides were born, and then pesticides were born, and it all kind of became this big melting pot of horrible stuff that was pushed on the back of government policy and the fact that everyone was on rations. So farmers were encouraged to kind of get bigger, become intensive, and instead of being diverse, they were encouraged to kind of streamline operations and focus on one thing. As a result of that, the small family farm that was self-sustaining and self-sufficient became something that was totally reliant on external inputs. So that kind of brought in the hands of the corporations, where they were able to make a bit of the farmers' money on selling them grain at an inflated price because they'd bought it and traded it on the commodity market. They could sell them pesticides, they could sell them fertilizers. And the food system we know today was born because when you specialize, you end up with a lot of one thing. So it's hard to sell to your local market or your kind of local economy. You end up with 100 cows, so you have to sell it to an abattoir, which then sells it to a butcher, which then sells it on to you. You're not going to go directly to every butcher to sell all your 100 cows. So this kind of disconnected what was a connection between rural communities and farms, and made a kind of introduced a middleman. So a kind of an interesting kind of statistic that I heard, I'm not sure if it's 100% right, but I think it's right enough, was that at the turn of the century, when they, for every pound spent on food, 90p of that pound was going directly to the farmer. Nowadays, for every pound spent on food, 10p ends up in the farmer's pocket, and 90p ends up in all the middlemen's pockets. So as a result of that, farmers have been forced to either go big or go home. So that's a lot of what you've heard, like a term that you hear used a lot amongst farmers. And the whole concept of that is, in order to make a viable living, when you had £1,000, when you were making a viable living off your 10 cows, your 2 pigs, your chickens, now you have to have 1,000 cows, and you've got to make a little bit of every cow, and you're going to be fine. But everyone else around you is going out of business, and it's ended up becoming reliant on subsidies. And I'd like to stress that also, this didn't really happen. Farmers didn't open their farm gates and say, come on in, I want this to happen. This push was very much pushed by the government. It was there were large subsidies to put up chicken sheds, there were large subsidies to put up intensive pig units, there were large subsidies to intensify. So as a result of that, we've ended up with a very specialist farming industry, where everyone's a specialist. There's a cattle specialist, a sheep specialist, and that's kind of diluted what it is to kind of, in my opinion, to be a farm. And sorry, one sec. And that kind of brings us up to speed to where we are today. Now, we can't go back to the family farm because we don't have enough people living in rural communities. As Colin said, we're extremely short on farmers. The average farmer's age is around 65, I think. Is that correct? Something like that. Anyway, they should be retired, basically. So now we've got to look at, in my opinion, we've got to kind of create a new system that will work to go forward into the future. So what would be good would be to take advantage of all the modern technology which has been developed, stuff like electric fences. They're incredible. If you had them 100 years ago, a lot could be done. And so to combine old practices using new techniques and bring farming forward into a new age of farming. And it's something you find when you talk to neighbours, because obviously my farm's very interesting to my neighbours. They look over the fence and they go, "Oh, what are you doing there? That looks interesting." And I've probably sometimes take the time, I'm like, yeah, I'm having a go at agroforestry. We're planting trees in fields and we're going to kind of try and integrate a few things. And they go, oh, well, good luck to you, but I don't think that would work on my place. And I find that quite interesting because a lot of farmers, they kind of become set in their ways. They don't want to kind of change things or diversify because it's more risk. It's already risky business what they're doing. So they're kind of on the opinion that it might work. What works for you won't work for me, even though we're next door to each other. And the other thing is, if like as an organic farmer, I've got neighbours that were organic and now are not organic, and they said, "Oh, I went organic, but it didn't work for me. There wasn't a market for it. I was promised like high milk prices, then milk prices dropped, and now they're not organic anymore." So there's a hesitance to change. It needs to be kind of driven from a demand factor. Farmers aren't going to go out of their way to kind of create a new product for a market that they're not sure about. And then at the moment, we're kind of in a kind of the policy around farming is very much lobbied for by agro-business. They've got plenty of money to spend on plenty of lobbyists that go out there and keep policy kind of business as usual. As Tracy spoke about, the corporations that kind of dominate the food market, they're doing a very, very good job of dominating it. So if we actually want to see a change that is tangible, it really has to be a grassroots thing, in my opinion. We need to vote with our feet. We need to kind of make informed decisions. We need to educate ourselves on it because it is a absolute, even me as someone that's passionate about what I eat, what I produce, what each thing means. It's a minefield of kind of certifications and different labels, and there's a lot of labels that have been produced by the big companies that like appear to be a high welfare label or appear to be this, or kind of you got your red tractor, which is the very lowest of the welfare things, and you got all these labels that as a consumer you go, oh great, that says it's good, I'm going to grab that, but like it's not so simple. You need to basically fully understand, and that kind of, sorry, I'm kind of waffling in a bit. So yeah, in order to kind of get things moving, we've got to educate ourselves, and it's quite a big job to educate ourselves. But if we can vote with our money, buy things that we believe are supporting the right kind of agriculture, that's the only thing we're going to encourage. If you look at basic economics, demand encourages supply. Where you have a high demand, the price of supply goes up, the price of the product goes up, and the supply goes up and as a result. So unless there's a kind of a demand for it, nothing's going to change, and we will probably end up sterilizing the planet. Sorry, that was a bit bleak. So yeah, we need more. My final point on this page, I kind of covered it, but farmers are innovative people, and they will go with trends, and they will eventually change, even if there is certain hesitations, but it has to come from demand. You can see in Germany, there's a very high demand for organic produce. German supermarkets have understood this. They want to be part of the organic market. They want to supply their customers with the produce, but they've found that there's been a lack of farmers producing the organic produce, so they've actually actively started paying farmers a payment to become organic, and then they're also buying their produce. So that's a good example of how demand can push a change in the food industry. Oh, wow. Okay, well that's not working. I've managed to cover most of my points there. So I guess the main thing is like, understanding where you're kind of, understanding what you're buying, what you're eating, and kind of voting with your things. It's important where possible, if you can, create a connection with your supplier. I understand kind of like localizing food and having a connection with your farmer and stuff. It's very easy if you live in the middle of the countryside and you've got lots of farmers around you. For an audience that lives in the city, it's kind of, if I go to your local farm and get a veg box, you're going to go, well, I don't really have a local farm. But there is still a lot of, we live in an age of technology. You can kind of find farms online. There's Riverford, there's loads of other things. I wouldn't necessarily say Riverford's the best place you should go to. I don't want to advertise Riverford, but I do think it's it's a good baseline, but there are loads of small independent farms that do their own veg boxes. And if you can go directly to an independent farm, you actually know you're supporting a family, some people, someone that's actually trying to make a difference. Okay, drawn a blank. Oh yeah, and then like I think the whole local food movement, I think it's it's a great thing, but it's also local doesn't mean you don't have to take any notice of the way the food's produced. I speak to a lot of people that say, yeah, I support local food, I get pork off the local farmer. I'm like, so how does the local farmer farm his pigs? Oh, I haven't asked them that. It turns out that the local farmer keeps their pigs in a concrete box and feeds them GM crops. So there's no sustainability in it. So I think it's important not to kind of just go with the trend and kind of go local, but it's also important to kind of understand local's great, but understand that local production so you're not just kind of accepting it. I'm not sure the time thing stopped, but I have finished.